On the practical, that's where we want to cut to the chase. All right. This would look good as a ornament hanging
Oh my
from
goodness.
it.
You found one? And you stole it?
Nobody stole it.
Oh, still time.
All right, so first thing we will note, we have the scrotum. Okay, please do not refer to it as a ball sack that I get from time to time.
Oh my God.
I get that at Pace.
I
I
would
get
put
all
that on
these
there.
young girls, and they're referring to it as the ball sack.
Oh my
Okay?
god, that's funny.
And I never ask, what is this structure? Because I'm also tired of seeing inappropriate answers, such as ball, nut, or somebody wants to go all out, and based on the presentation, it's the left nut. Okay?
That's not going to be on the test. Okay.
This, I don't make this stuff up. Okay? So, lining, when the testy descends through the inguinal canal, meaning it's crossing over the pubic bone, but under the inguinal ligament, it drags nerves, blood vessels, and very importantly, the ductwork that's necessary to get the sperm into the pelvic cavity. Behind it, as it pushes through, it gets coated first by a layer of peritoneum, and that's why the outer coating is called the tunica albuginea. But then that double layer of mesentery, we said was vaginal process, it creates a double layered coating with that thin black line actually is a cavity, we would say. And so we would have the tunica albuginea, and then at the black line, the tunica vaginalis, and then the scrotum. The scrotum actually is lined by a thin muscle called the cremasteric muscle, which pulls the testes up and down during sex, okay? We'll just leave it at that. What we note here is the folded epididymis. So we're only going to go by the models next week. The epididymis is going to become basically an incubation area. When spermatids are first formed, they're immotile. They do not have a flagella. They enter this 22-foot long tubule. That's just it. It's all coiled over and over. It takes about 64 to 72 days by peristalsis to move the immature spermatids from point A to point B, where they're ready for delivery. By that point, they've developed a motile flagella, and that's why we say now they're spermatozoa, like little sperm animals, because they can move. All of the nerves and blood vessels form what we call the Pampiniform plexus, and then we see the spermatic cord. But once we hop over the surface of the pubic bone, we see the tubule that we call the vas or ductus deferens. So this becomes the conveyance for getting sperm into the pelvic cavity from each of the two testes. The term vasectomy means we're either cutting the vas deferens, which means the sperm have nowhere to go. So as a result, this individual can no longer impregnate anybody because the sperm aren't going to get to a point of delivery. What they also do now is they make little clamps that close and compress it, so it can be a reversible process. They've had too many instances of men who had the vasectomy for marriage 1, got divorced, marriage 2, they want to have a child with wife number 2, and sometimes there's too much scarring for a resection to be possible for it to work. On the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if the compression leads to the same issue.
Well, do you know it's still viable for a year?
That the
Sperm's still viable for a year.
yeah, well,
I have a 3-year-old niece. They found
but
that out.
they went to the wrong doctor.
Yeah, right.
He just woke up and went, "Oh, so it's all done?" Yeah. Pay the girl. Okay. So the vas ductus deferens and hooks behind the bladder, and when it does so, we say that this is the ampulla. So this would be the vas or ductus, this would be the ampulla. what we see is the ureter going into the urinary bladder, and the ampulla on each side is going to merge with the duct from the seminal vesicles. We have a left and right seminal vesicle. They produce about 60% of the semen volume, and when the ampulla merges with the seminal vesicle, it forms what we're going to see on the cross-section as the ejaculatory duct. So there'll be a left ejaculatory duct, a right ejaculatory duct, and the two of them will merge in the middle with the urethra in the middle of the prostate. So it's almost like we're making this Y-shaped process, more like a peace symbol when you think about it, because the urethra comes down, these two merge together, and this is where we now say we're looking at a combined urogenital system. So there's our seminal vesicle, there's our prostate right in the middle, and this is where we get to remove that and look at the cross-section. On the cross-section, we note the muscular wall of the bladder is called a detrusor muscle. The folds that we see on the surface, these are known as rugae. We looked at them when we saw transitional epithelium. That's what made look like broccoli. It were this rugae, meaning if you just fill the bladder with urine, the wall smooths out. When we empty the bladder, yeah, it all gets pulled together. The detrusor muscle forms the internal urethral sphincter. That's what we see over here. And then we refer to the urethra as it passes through the prostate as the prostatic urethra. This would be the ampulla that we see kind of wiggly up there, but the smoother area here, that is our ejaculatory duct. And so when the ejaculatory ducts now begin introducing seminal fluid into the prostatic urethra. When our urethra reaches the urogenital diaphragm, the urogenital diaphragm is skeletal muscle. This forms the external urethral sphincter. And so we would say at this point, we call it the membranous urethra. And then we pass through the diaphragm and enter the bulb of the penis. The muscle tissue we see here is referred to as the bulbocavernosus muscle. The muscle that we see anchored to the ramus of the ischium, this is the ischiocavernosus muscle. And so what we see emerging at this point, that's where we'd say it's now called the penile or spongy urethra. The tissue that fused from the urethral groove, this is where we say we have the corpus spongiosum, which is continuous with the glans penis. That was the genital tubercle. The areas where we're trying to say, gee, that looks like blood sinusoids, those are the corpus cavernosum. Thanks to the limbic system telling the parasympathetic nervous system about something that may be arousing, nitric acid is released, and this causes what we properly call vasocongestion. Meaning not only do they become engorged, but it remains engorged, and that's where an erection comes from. The reason why they referred to Viagra as a miracle pill was that it somehow was able to rejuvenate, resurrect, or bring about the natural process of arousal leading to erection, and then after climax, orgasm, going into a refractory, and then the sinusoid's empty. As opposed to a male takes a Viagra and he gets an erection, and then he's got to wait for the pill to